All right, we're back here today talking Eternals after last week speaking about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Next week is Spider-Man No Way Home, so we'll save the good stuff for then. We did settle on, or, I know we got a couple of suggestions as far as show names and podcast names ideas. We're actually going to welcome on Raphael next week, who came up with the name. I believe it was Raphael. He gave me a couple of great suggestions, and I really like the next panel. I really like that one a lot. I'm not going to use it for this one. I'm probably going to wait until we get into the Moon Knight stuff, so it's more consistent. But I'm going to be using that pretty soon because I like that title a lot. But like I said, today we're talking Eternals, which I was today years old when I realized the movie's called just Eternals and not The Eternals. I thought it was The Eternals. I didn't know it was just Eternals. That's completely nitpicky stuff. But that's what we're talking about here today. A couple of months removed from its release. As always, joining me, we got Doc Chris Mueller on the Twitter machine, BR_Doctor. Chris, what's going on, my man?
Oh, not too much. Better late than never with this one, right?
Yeah, I know. We've been speaking about this for a while. Better to just get it out of the way. And I like how it's sandwiched in between Shang-Chi and Spider-Man. And a little while later after this, we'll talk about Boba Fett and stuff. We were just talking about that before we hit record here. Peacemaker as well, which has been a great show. We'll just get this one out of the way here, and not too much to say about it. So I don't anticipate this going too long. Phil, you're here as well. Phil DL616 on the Twitter machine. Phil, what's going on, my man?
I'm good.
When was the first time you had seen this movie? Because I know it took you a while to finally watch Eternals, Phil.
Today.
And that's so funny. So I know Chris and I have talked about it before, off the air. Give me your thoughts. What do you think of Eternals watching it today on Disney Plus?
It was weird. I feel like if you like all of the weird Kirby-esque stuff of Marvel Comics, you might like this movie. But if you're just looking for a straightforward action movie, it's probably not going to be for you. I thought it was interesting. I feel like I need to watch it again to catch some of the stuff that I missed, because it's a lot of very heavy stuff in it. But I didn't dislike it. Saying I liked it might be a strong words too. But I don't think, because going into it, I heard so many people say that it was bad or they didn't like it. I don't think that it's bad. I just think that I don't know, man. It's just so much going on. It's at once.
Yeah. If it's not a bad movie, which I would agree with, I wouldn't call this a bad movie. Would you classify it, though, as a bad Marvel movie? I would rank this towards maybe not the bottom, but towards the bottom of all the MCU movies they've done in the last 15 years. Would you say the same, or would you think it was more around the middle? Would you say it was Marvel bad in your opinion?
I think compared to what the standard is for Marvel movies, I think it's probably low on a lot of people's lists. But like I said, I don't know if that's necessarily because the movie is bad or because it's just not, it doesn't fit the usual Marvel formula. And there's just so much weird stuff. There's so much, either religion allegories here or nods to history and all these other things. And I feel like if you don't have any interest in any of that stuff, it's probably just not going to hit for you.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a lot of hope going into it. I mean, I'm of the three of us, obviously, I'm the least knowledgeable as far as the comics go and stuff like that. The movie did come out from when we're talking today on February 5th on Saturday. It came out exactly 3 months ago on November 5th. So it took you 3 months, Phil, to watch the movie. Is this the longest stretch that you've gone without watching a Marvel movie from when it first came out, or are there other movies that you can relate that to?
Yeah, this is definitely the longest stretch. Because I usually end up seeing a lot of them in theater, and I think also just because of COVID, I didn't rush to go see it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think COVID also is part of why this movie wasn't as well received, because we went so long without a Marvel movie in theaters, and then we got back and it was this very weird, unconventional Marvel movie, and people are like, what is this?
Yeah, this was definitely different than all the movies, all the Marvel stuff that we got in 2021, from the shows to the other movies that we've talked about and will talk about going forward. This is definitely the odd one out. Chris, I know we've talked about it off air before, but on the record, your thoughts on Eternals and how it holds up 3 months later after seeing it.
I'm kind of in the camp that I don't think it's a bad movie either. I wouldn't knock anybody for saying they liked this movie, but for me, it's I was kind of bored most of the time. I felt like there was no plot twist. So even though they were kind of setting it up that way with like, oh, Icarus is actually blah, 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 whatever. Like, I never felt like that was enough of a mystery to keep me invested.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of it, the action scenes felt so paint by numbers. And I wonder if that's maybe because Chloe Zhao is an incredible filmmaker, but she's not very experienced when it comes to action. So maybe she just, this is how she directs action and it's not for me. I don't know. But I just felt like so many things in the movie that were introduced were interesting and then not developed upon enough. And I know that they're setting up for more stuff in the future, but like a movie needs to be able to stand on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie, to me, will probably be one of those movies like it'll almost be like an Iron Man 3 at some point where so many cool things that were started in this movie will happen in other movies that people will appreciate the Eternals later. Because like we'll probably get something cool with the Celestials at some point. We'll probably get something cool with Star Fox and Pip the Troll. Like, you know, all this weird stuff. But for now, I don't know. It just seemed like a lot of really boring, sad conversations strung together.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Nobody in this movie was happy about anything at any point. Like the closest one to being happy about anything was Cersei. And that's just because she had a boyfriend and a smartphone.
Well, Kingo was happy. Kingo was
oh, you know what?
His best life in India.
Kingo, and that's the other thing is Kingo felt like the most Marvel part of this movie. Like he's there to make the quips and get a laugh. And no, like he felt like he was from a different movie. Like him and Druig do not feel like characters that exist in the same world to me. And yet here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody played their roles well. And I would like to see a lot of these characters come back. I just don't think that this is the movie that I'm going to hold up in 10 years as like, you know, this is my favorite thing from phase 4. Like, no, it's, you know, it's a decent entry with some interesting ideas that just at the end of the day was a little underwhelming for me.
Yeah, I mean, there was just so much going on, like both of you guys said. Going off what you said, Chris, with everything going on in this movie, did it warrant being almost a 3-hour movie? And we've had so few movies actually in the MCU that have gone that long, with Infinity War and Endgame being among them, and obviously as recently as No Way Home a couple of months ago, which we'll talk about next week. Did this movie really need to be that long, or do you think it was that long because we had so many damn characters in this movie that was why it was as long as it was?
Yeah, they tried to give, like, how many Eternals were there in this? 10?
I think 10, yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of characters to introduce at once. Guardians of the Galaxy, like, barely made it with 5.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, you really need a lot of character development for these superhero characters. Otherwise, they just feel like stereotypes, which a lot of them, that's how they started out as, clearly. Like, look at Shang-Chi. They just took a bunch of stereotypes and we're like, that's a character. Now it's obviously evolved, but it's still like, that's how a lot of where comics were based. We're just like, what's a thing? Oh, that's a thing. All right, well, that's a character. So,
yeah,
I don't know. It's just weird, but I do think that Chloe Zhao, like, opened the door for other, like, prestige filmmakers to sort of come in and put their own style on it, because this did feel unique in terms of the way the movie was presented. Like, it was shot just slightly differently. The acting was slightly different than most Marvel stuff. And so I feel like that at least was interesting enough for me to be like, okay, well, now I'd like to see what other directors can do with the Marvel stuff who aren't just known for being the funny guy.
Yeah, I mean, we got that funny, like you said, we had with what was his name? Kingo. He was my favorite part of the whole movie, just because I don't know, you can't get that Marvel vibe from every Marvel movie. You can't do it in every movie. And I understand this was supposed to be something different, but I don't know. I mean, you mentioned earlier, Chris, that you could see or maybe want to see some of these characters come back in future stuff. We're clearly, I don't know if we're getting a sequel or a spinoff or whatever based off the ending, which again, we'll jump around here. Were there any characters beyond Kingo that you would like to see come back or that you think will factor into future films and stuff beyond Eternals? Or did really no other character stand out in a positive way to you?
I mean, I thought all the characters had value to be used in different ways in the future, but if we're talking about the character that I would have wanted to see return the most, it's a character that fucking died. Like, I don't know why, but for some reason Salma Hayek was like my favorite part of the movie, and then boom. So
Yeah.
there's rumors that some of the dead Eternal characters will come back because it's comic books. That's what always happens. Like, nobody stays dead but Uncle Ben, right? So it's like, you know, Icarus flying into the sun, we didn't see him die, so maybe he didn't die. Like, there's a million things, but yeah, I do like some of the characters, but like, I don't see them basing a whole movie around a lot of these characters. I think they'll probably be those kind of characters that pop up as like side characters and other things before the big team up movies.
Yeah, I could see that. I could see different people popping up in different stuff. I mean, obviously no need to bring back all 10, maybe just a select few, but I definitely think they tried to focus a little too much. There was the biggest problem maybe for me was all the interacting love triangles and love story. There was, maybe one I can understand. Two, okay. There were like at least 3 different love stories, I think, being told here throughout the movie. And I just was not a fan of that. And just, I
Oh my God.
do a lot for me personally.
I got to bring something up. So Phil, this goes back to something you had pointed out. I think we were on Tom's podcast. Yeah. Because we were talking about Romeo Must Die and how there's this weird thing where like they don't let Asian leads kiss people in a lot of Hollywood movies.
Yes.
So were Gilgamesh and Angelina Jolie's characters together?
I don't think that they were together. I think that they were really good friends, and I think it kind of led to that, but they never really confirmed that that's what they were.
Because there was so many little, like, they had these longing looks, and they would say certain things to each other that like you kind of only say to your significant other.
Yeah, I think they always hinted at it, and they never really confirmed it here. So I wasn't sure. But I mean, they hinted at a lot of stuff that the other Eternals were kind of like fawning over. Like, I mean, there's at least 3 people in this cast that fawning over Icarus in this movie.
Sprite for sure.
Sprite for sure. It seemed like Kingo too at certain points.
Yeah, he was playing Icarus in the Bollywood movie that they were making when they came to get him.
Yeah, and he's like a big Captain America fan randomly. Yeah. I don't know. I think the most interesting character that I want to see again, and we're clearly going to see him again, is Dane Whitman. Like, we didn't get to see him a lot of him in this movie because they spent most of the movie setting up him for the next movie. But I'm like, man, give me a Black Knight movie or a TV show. I want it.
Yo, and then Blade too. Like,
yeah.
Why was Blade there? What's he doing? Let's talk about this. Nope, just cutscene. It's done.
No, just it's set up. Like, I feel like this movie does a great job of setting up a lot of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I would say that it isn't good on its own as its own narrative. I think that it is, but I think that, I don't know, I just feel like it is way more heavy than people really want a Marvel movie to be. It almost feels like, and this might be a bad example, it feels like what Ang Lee tried to do with the Hulk movie, where he like tried to introduce all these interesting ideas in it, and some people just don't want to see Hulk doing that. They just want to see Hulk smash things. They don't want to see any of this like introspective stuff in a Hulk movie. And that's a bad example, of course, because that just isn't a good movie in my opinion. I don't think this is a bad movie, but I do feel like they tried to introduce a lot of ideas that people are just not going to get a hold of right away. Like, I feel like a lot of it went over people's heads.
Yeah.
Do you guys think the movie may have benefited from coming out earlier? I don't know when you would have plugged it in the MCU schedule, but was it a matter of timing and maybe people would have been more receptive to the characters had this been 5 years ago? Or really would it not have really made a difference when it came out?
I don't know if it would have made a difference. I kind of feel like this would have been better as a big mini series.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
I
yes.
I feel like if this was done in like a good 8 episode miniseries or something like this, it would have been much better. Because it would have given a lot of this stuff, the ideas, more room to breathe.
Yeah. And you could have spent a little more time in the past too, because to me, some of the most interesting stuff was seeing them impacting history, not
Yeah, that was
necessarily
cool.
what they're doing now.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
that opening scene where Cersei like walks up to the kid and picks up that knife and like transforms it into what would eventually be like an ancient Egyptian kind of artifact. I was like, oh, that's really cool. And the music was great. And I'm like, all right, this movie might actually be better than people gave it credit for. And every time they kept going back to the past and showing the different ways that they were influencing people and the different things that they like were not allowing themselves to get involved with, I'm like, this is way more interesting than watching them fight a deviant who keeps sucking their powers up.
yeah. I feel like they did some very intelligent stuff with the stuff where they did interact with human history. Like of course, like the Mesopotamia stuff is just very interesting. The part where they end up splitting up is very interesting because it's kind of the beginning of like civilization's disillusionment with gods. And I was like, that had to be very intentional. Um, and just stuff like, them being so put off by genocide. And that was kind of like the first account of genocide, at least on this side of the world. Yeah, they did some very clever things with those scenes. And that's why I'm like, man, if they made this a series kind of like Heroes or what's the other one that was on Netflix? Is it Series 8?
Oh, Sense8.
Sense8, there you go. Something like that, where it was just like a Netflix exclusive or a Disney Plus exclusive, I think would have been much better.
I agree. Because I think if you'd spent time, like maybe give each character sort of their own episode to
Yeah,
focus
that's what I
on
was
them.
thinking too. Yeah.
Like to me, the characters that got the least development character wise were the ones I wanted to know the most about, which I guess maybe that's a success of the movie, is because I do want some of these characters to return. But like Phastos's story is super interesting. Like
Yeah.
he's trying to introduce technology to the civilization,
Mhm.
but not necessarily things we're not ready for. And then you see his guilt over the
bomb,
use of a
right?
nuclear bomb, which like
Yeah.
I don't know if they were implying that he was part of the Manhattan Project or he just feels like he advanced us too quickly to get to that point. But it was still one of those things where it's like, that's an interesting angle. Like
Yeah.
a superhero whose power is essentially inventing things, trying to help humanity, and then all of a sudden feeling guilty and withdrawing from humanity.
Yeah, that was
And
interesting. Yeah, and I created a lot of interesting ideals. Yeah.
yeah, so and Brian Tyree Henry, like I'm really glad that guy's popping up in so many places because he really is a great actor, and I thought he pulled off some of those emotional scenes very well, but
Mhm.
still managed to actually say a quip here and there too.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
thought the Hiroshima scene was very good.
Yes.
Yep.
I thought the scene with him, them finding out he had a family and everything was also really good. Yeah, I thought most of the stuff he did in this movie was great. When whatever that thing he came up with to stop Icarus momentarily, I thought that was dope. Like how he basically had him trapped in there and he kept trying to pull himself out of it. I thought that was great.
Yeah. There was, and like Makari being a mute character obviously limits what you can do with her in the grand scheme of Marvel. But like, I did like the way that they used her in this movie, even though we've seen speedster stuff done a million times. Like, it's going to be hard for any movie to top that Days of Future Past Quicksilver scene when it comes to portraying speedster abilities on screen.
I did think this was one of the coolest fight scenes I've seen a speedster in. Her fight with Icarus was great.
Yeah, some of the stuff she was doing was awesome, and I liked her relationship with Druig too. Like I thought that they made a good pairing.
I really enjoy what they did with Druig in this movie because Druig is a villain in the comics, and so I feel like the entire movie we're waiting for Druig to do something really really bad and turn on the others, and they flipped it on its head by having Icarus do something really bad instead, and I thought that was great. I thought that was a good way of again making this an unconventional superhero movie.
Yeah, Druig was an interesting character, but they didn't do enough with him in this movie. Like, if all the things that I'm looking forward to are things that didn't happen in this movie, like that still doesn't mean that the characters were developed well. Like Sprite, to me, that's another character that should have had like an entire episode of a TV show showing the struggles she had. Because at the end of the movie, when she's bitching about not being able to grow up and live a normal life, like the movie set that up, but it didn't do enough to make me realize that she's been suffering for thousands of years because of this.
Yeah, it just kind of implied. Yeah.
And so I'm glad that the movie sort of ended with her kind of being given that chance to grow old as a normal human. I'm just wondering if that means she's done, because like it seems like they probably had to take away her powers to make her human, right?
I would assume so. Yeah. That's what I was wondering as you were saying that. I'm like, hopefully they had taken away her powers and she's just not, 12 years old. She's just repeating the 5th grade for the rest of her life. I was curious how that worked though. I don't know if they ever actually said that, did they?
Yeah.
Well, she just said like, I can make you human, which implied to me your powers will no longer be part of you because that's an eternal thing.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
But like, I would be interested to see if she shows up in future movies as just a purely human character, or if they'll have her like studying at the feet of Doctor Strange to learn a different kind of magic or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they definitely left room to come and reintroduce that character somewhere else. I mean, they left room for most of the characters to come back. I don't believe for a second that Icarus is dead.
No.
Yeah, it's the Marvel trope. If you don't actually see him die, they'll probably be brought back at some point. And I mean, obviously, he was kind of the main focal point. But do you guys think the movie suffered at all from not having a strong antagonist? I mean, obviously, we had Icarus towards the second half of the movie, but they had the Deviants, Peter Skarsgård or whoever playing or doing the voice or whatever of the main Deviant. I don't know, that just seemed a little generic to me. As someone who doesn't really follow the comics and not really know too much about the Deviants beyond what we've heard on the shows and the movies, I just thought that was a bit on the weaker side. Again, I thought Icarus was very good overall, but I thought the Deviant stuff could have been better done. But I'm curious what your guys' thoughts were.
I think having like a real traditional big bad and having like this big, mustache twirling bad guy being behind everything towards the end would have kind of ruined a lot of the ideas they were trying to go with in this movie. I really like the idea of the Deviants figuring out like, oh, we were put here and kind of toyed with like you guys, but we're still mad at you guys because you killed the rest of the Deviants.
Yeah.
I just really like the idea of the Celestials playing God, and then even the Eternals going there and on a smaller level playing God. It was weird. It was almost like you had the same idea on top of each other, kind of like one of those Russian doll things where it's like you pull one out and it's another one under it.
What about you, Chris?
I don't know. It's the Deviant that wasn't an interesting villain to me. Like, I was waiting. I know that they had developed the one Deviant to sort of advance and evolve, but like I was waiting for some power behind the Deviants to be revealed, and then it turned out it was just also Arishem. So that was a little disappointing to me, but I thought considering what those aliens looked like the way that they were designed, I did think the CGI was actually pretty good, because like that looked like a difficult alien to animate, because it was like basically a bunch of tentacles and veins and stuff moving around as in the form of a creature. Like, that was impressive to me, but I almost feel like it wasn't interesting enough to be anything as well. Like, the Deviant just felt like another faceless alien villain just like the Chitauri or the Frost Giants or any number of these armies that we've seen get wiped out. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it felt like the Deviants were just there for the big action set scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So it just to give the Eternals something to punch.
Right.
But I feel like the ideas of the movie were, kind of too big for just punch and kick drama. And so it was like you just had them there as, like I said, for something to punch. Yeah, and I mean that's to the detriment of the Deviants. And at the same time, like I said, I really enjoy this idea of free will that they did throughout the movie.
Yeah, it was one of the better themes of the movie. Yeah, no, for sure. I think for the faults this movie had, and like I said, I don't think it needed to be almost 3 hours long, but I think had they condensed it and kind of emphasized stuff like that a little bit more, and what you mentioned earlier, Chris, about like the Sprite thing, I think it would have been a bit better. I don't want to say more memorable, but I don't know. I think it would have been a stronger piece of business overall had they kind of condensed it down and focused a little bit more on what mattered and not so much on the love shit. I mean, that was just the overarching theme for me, and I was not a fan of that like at all. There was just way too much of it. And I listen, I understand that you were together for thousands of years, whatever the hell it is. You're obviously going to fall for some of the people that you're with of the 10 people. Like, listen, I get it. It makes sense, but I just didn't really think they needed to lean into that as much as they did. But there was something else I was going to bring up to you. You guys mentioned the Deviants and whatnot. I thought there was another aspect of the movie I wanted to discuss, and I don't remember. Oh man. Any other thoughts, Chris, on Eternals?
I do think it's funny how Marvel is just running through the different types of mythologies. Like, we've already dealt with all the Norse stuff. This takes care of the Greek stuff, and we're about to get Zeus and Hercules and stuff. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be all the Roman stuff. It's
only King Arthur exists.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before we see Jesus in a cape. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, they touched on a lot of religious stuff in this movie that I'm not sure people really were all that interested in. And like I said, there's stuff there that I noticed, but I'm like, I have to rewatch it because I'm not sure if I caught the idea that they were trying to get across. But also, this is a very diverse movie. I mean, I think the fact that they made the Eternals very diverse, they made sure to get not just like a mute actress in, but have somebody that does sign language. I was surprised that they went full out and gave us a gay marriage in a Marvel movie. Is this the first time we've seen that?
A marriage, I believe, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was interesting.
But it also felt like they put it in and then didn't want to draw attention to it. Because it felt to me like they were going for a feeling of this is normal and inclusive, and therefore they avoided any chances to address how that might have affected him throughout his time. Because let's face it, there's been plenty of times in history where being gay would get you killed. So what was it like for him during those periods in those societies? Like, show me that. But no, they didn't. It was just like, we got a kiss, which it's fine. Like, I'm not I'm not gay, so I'm not the person to say whether or not this was good representation. I just felt like you opened the door for a really interesting story about this guy who's been here for thousands of years.
Yeah.
To show us what it might have been like for him in those situations, and didn't even address it as being a thing.
Couldn't find time in the 3 hours to do it, I guess.
Yeah.
I think the stuff with his kid and Angelina Jolie towards the end, that made me laugh. That was genuinely funny.
Yeah,
when she like pops her spear out to get him the orange, and Fastos just freaks out and he's just like, okay, your babysitting privileges are revoked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did enjoy that they tried to normalize it. But again, it was one of those things where they introduced so many things, they didn't give anything enough time to breathe.
Yeah. Pretty much like this, even though this was about 10 characters, this felt like a movie about Cersei and Icarus more than anybody else, to me anyway. And like, I actually really liked the actress playing Cersei, but I felt like she ended up being one of the least interesting characters at the end of the movie.
Wasn't that actress in something else Marvel related, or am I?
Yeah, she was in Captain Marvel. She played she
okay.
played the Kree who was on the strike team with Carol like early
That's
on.
what it
She
was.
kind of
Yeah.
she's like the sniper rifle toting girl.
Mm-hmm. All right, I was gonna say I thought it might have been a show or
Minerva.
something.
Minerva. That
That's
was
her
her
name.
name.
Okay,
Minerva.
interesting. Yeah, no, I was curious. I forgot if she was in something like major, but obviously that is something major. But yeah, no, I agree with you guys. I really do feel like they could have. There was some of the stuff that you guys said I wasn't really thinking about watching the movie, but thinking about it now, there was definitely a few missed opportunities there as far as what they could do, and hopefully they will, whether it be a TV show or, it's been a couple months, but there hasn't been any talk of if or when they're doing a sequel, right? I mean, I would imagine they would have to after that ending. I mean, it was really clearly leading to some sort of like a part 2 type thing. That wasn't like an open-ended ending. There was definitely some sort of follow-up coming at some point. There has to be.
Well, I could see the Celestials sort of being an Avengers level thing to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of places they can go back to it. I mean, if you're introducing a character like Starfox, you can go back to it in Guardians. I don't know what the main storyline of the final Guardians is going to be, but I can see them showing up there. I don't know.
In the meantime, this is what I was going to ask before, and I totally forgot about it. In the meantime, are we just stuck with a giant head in the sky for forever? I mean, is that just going to be there? And I mean, it wasn't addressed in No Way Home at all, obviously, but I mean, I guess that's just part of the world now, right?
Well, I had a theory about that because there's one of the Avengers headquarters is a dead Celestial.
Did we talk about this? And we talked about, I think it was you, Chris. I had heard this from somewhere. Maybe I had seen this online. Maybe you talked about it the last time we spoke.
I think we talked about it. Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit, but like,
I like that.
I think it would be interesting if that became like just an Avengers headquarters somewhere out there, wherever that took place. Because I don't even remember where they said that final battle was taking place.
No, I don't think they said. That would be cool though. At least you can make the most of it. It's not just there, and it's something that's either forgotten about. I mean, hopefully, knowing Marvel, they would go back to that and reference that. That's a pretty big deal. So, I mean,
know. she just turned the whole thing into rock, right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was massive. So I don't know. We'll see. That was one of my interesting takeaways from the movie. But yeah, no, I would say it was a middle of the road movie. I would definitely put it towards the bottom, but it is what it is. And hopefully, it did present a lot of interesting ideals that like you guys said, I wish they had gone into more. And hopefully the follow-up, they kind of learn, I don't want to say from their mistakes here, but then kind of take the basis of the Eternals and kind of build upon that in future projects. So we will soon see, but we will have a bit more exciting stuff to talk about next week with hopefully Raphael talking about Spider-Man No Way Home after so many months. We'll finally be digging into it, what made it so great, all the other elements about that movie. So I look forward to that. In the meantime, Chris, you're on the Twitter machine. People can follow you there at BR_doctor. Phil, you're on Twitter as well. Via Phil DL616. Guys, this has been great. I look forward to speaking to you next week about Spider-Man No Way Home.
Thanks.